Thank you guys for sticking around for what I have dubbed to be the best panel of the day, and they usually say the best is saved for last, so here we go. And I'm conscious you want to have a cocktail, so we will be quick, but we're informative and you won't want to miss it. I have an amazing panel beside me today of experts who are here to really discuss with us the growth of programmatic digital out of home. We really are going to dive into how their agencies and their clients are approaching the channel. We will be discussing the challenges and the barriers we face. I think a lot of the time we do shy away from these, but we will dive into those. But we are also going to talk about the opportunities and the really great things that have been happening. So I will introduce this wonderful panel. I have Michael Whiteside, who is the Chief Media Activation Officer for Kinesso. I have KP, who is Group Director at Essence Mediacom. Katherine, I've just abbreviated you, sorry. We've got Joe Barnes, who's the Head of Investment for PhD, and Dan Cutrone, who's a medium partner at Avenue C. Before I kind of kick on, and I should introduce myself, I'm Laura Wall. I'm Head of Programmatic at QMS Media, and I'm living the brand today in my pink. Look, in my opinion, I think the trading of out-of-home programmatically has so many advantages, and it can make the channel even more powerful for clients and for agencies as well. However, being one of the last traditional mediums that's on this journey, it does have uniqueness. I think we have a few extra hoops and challenges that we may need to jump through. We've touched on a couple of those today. The fact is we are a one-to-many medium, and the devices, also known as the panels that are in the ground, are owned by their location and not by a human or a household. So I think the big question is, how do we measure the impact effectively when the rest of the industry is measuring on a one-to-one? We will dive into that in a moment. I think it is extremely important. Again, we've touched on this before. The role of the channel is different to other channels that we do have, and I would like to see us utilising the technology to the channel and not the other way around. But this isn't about me. This is about you guys and these guys here to learn. So I want to kick it off. We've heard a lot about the predicted growth of out-of-home. Siggy mentioned it, Nick mentioned it. Within that, the programmatic growth is also set to soar. This year already, when we're looking at SMI data, you know, we're seeing huge growth, 90% in Jan and Feb, which is positive. I want to get some insight from you. How have your agencies been approaching the convergence? Georgie, I think you mentioned that earlier, of out of home. What's your journey been on the last 12 months to get us to the growth that we're seeing? Starting with you, Whiteside.
Great. So the enormous growth has been well documented today. We've seen very similar growth in Q1, the last few years, but it's been punctuated in Q1 this year in terms of triple-digit figure percentage growth from a Q1 to Q1 perspective. So we take convergence very seriously in the out-of-home space. I think it's very different to convergence from a video and audio standpoint. Those assets have been consumed very differently or are consumed very differently to the likes of TV and radio. So in that space, the investment has probably followed consumption. So trading in a converged manner in those terms of in those mediums has been quite different to digital out-of-home, where the consumption is relatively the same, right? The mode of consumption is identical. So in terms of convergence, we're looking at it more from a planning and strat perspective. And that's probably been the biggest shift in the last, not only 12 months, but the last few years. So coming out of COVID, we saw a lot of tactical usage in terms of programmatic digital out-of-home. So speed to market, in-flight optimization, and they're still really beneficial and really relevant now, but we've moved from tactical application into more always-on strategic elements. So within IPG, within Kinesso, to facilitate that, we've done it in many ways, chiefly two being tech from a planning perspective in terms of site mapping tools to pull static but also programmatically enabled panels together from a more holistic perspective. but also just converging teams and resources. So really familiarising programmatic teams in terms of the role of channel, but vice versa from a traditional standpoint, really familiarising them with what it can do in the platforms and the versatility of programmatic. So that's gone a long way in terms of the meeting of the minds.
I think you're right. I think we have seen it start to move away from more performance and into that kind of strategy of out of home and the role of that. KP?
Definitely.
You're
Look,
so eager.
I am an eager beaver because we're in the graveyard shift, so I feel like everyone here would love us to get it over and done with. But I feel like, that's a lot more laughs than I would have thought. I feel like you heard from Lambo enough in terms of like what the growth looks like for us in the last 12 months. But I think when we see numbers like the 4% to 8%, etc., I want to put some client stuff behind that. So what we've seen in the last 12 months, specifically at Essence Mediacom, and it's like clients that used to spend 20 to 30% of their out-of-home budget, we're now seeing some of them shift to 100% of their out-of-home budget in programmatic out-of-home. So I think those numbers aren't showing those shifts, and they're the clients who are using it for more of its addressability, and HVA targeting capabilities. And we do have clients that have gone from 0 to 5 to 10, but I think that's what we're not probably talking about enough, is like where the significant shifts are, because they kind of get averaged out as well.
Yeah, 100%. I think, Jo, you're very different to the IPGs and the Group M, so...
Yeah, definitely. It was interesting to hear from your perspective about how you're structured and Group M and IPG and the rest. I think at Omnicom, in PhD specifically, we saw convergence coming about 6 years ago. And, to your point about it being different to TV and audio and all the rest of it, we don't see it that way. So 6 years ago, we saw, budgets shift programmatically into BVOD and audio, and we knew that it was coming. So what we did, all of the senior traders were certified by the trade desk, and that then allowed them to talk the same language as an in-platform specialist, which used to be a programmatic specialist, but is now an activation specialist because they activate the campaigns. Our activation specialists sit within the teams. So they sit with the planners, they sit with the investment lead, and they activate the campaigns. So from a planning perspective, the planner plans end-to-end, regardless of channel. We don't have a digital planner planning out of home, it's just one planner plans across the whole ecosystem, omni-channel. Our tools plan like that as well. And then the negotiations are done at a portfolio level, so total out of home, total audio, video, the like, and then it's activated in platform. So I think we're structured very differently, and it's served us well. And I'll just say, we aren't the biggest spenders in programmatic out of home just yet, but if you look at where we are with BVOD, we're the largest spender of BVOD in the market. So so look out, it's coming.
So I think you're saying you've been doing it before these guys, so they followed you. Is that what you're saying?
We set it. So there's 13 different platforms now, and our activation specialists are brilliant at what they do, and we work seamlessly together with them.
Yeah, great. Dan, I'm excited to hear from you because we haven't had many indies up here. So just
great.
fill us in. What's happening in your world?
Yeah, so we're obviously an Australian-owned media agency, independent media agency, probably slightly different to the holding groups. But we've been on this journey for a little while now. We've tried to understand where the opportunities lie for programmatic out of home, and we're big supporters of out of home. Love what it can do, love the role it can play, love that it can build brands, build top-of-mind awareness, can play many different hats depending on the formats that we have. So we've been staying really close to it. And I guess what's different about us as an indie is that we've got really lean teams. So we've kind of got two work streams. We've got a planning business division, and we've got a media investment division. And what that brings is that we need to work through the campaign end to end from a planning perspective, all channels, from a trading perspective, all channels. So we are activating these campaigns, and I think the DSPs have done a brilliant job of making it really simple and easy to use. So we haven't been quick adopters to programmatic out of home, but we've been as close as we can be and keeping as close as we can be in the buy type, so that we can be ready to implement when that opportunity arises.
Okay, I'm going to stick with you for a minute then,
Yeah.
because you've just spoken about the adoption of it. What is the barrier? What is stopping you? What do you see as the challenges for you not to lean in more?
Yeah. So there's a couple of different things happening. I guess historically, the first thing for an indie perspective, we're working with our clients. We've got really strong relationships. But more so, as a business owner, I need to ensure that when our clients are spending and when we're recommending media channels, that's delivering against those business outcomes. That anything that we recommend directly responds to them seeing uplift in sales, so then they can come back and repeat their investments and grow. So it's critical that we absolutely get that right. If we don't, then they may not return, and that could be a huge loss for our business. So that is a big focus for us. Now, looking at programmatic digital out of home, when we've started to bring that into the remit, the currency has changed versus how we've been able to trade in that previously. So as a business, we need to understand what that currency is. And when we've started to buy these channels in the past, when we've bought out of home in the past, and I really like the idea that we're kind of scrapping programmatic, because out of home as a channel is really important. It's delivered amazing results for us. So when we're buying those channels in the past, we need to start to understand how those comparisons have been historically to our campaigns and how they've seen success. So our job is to understand the new currency and try to replicate that against how we've been able to buy previously. And that's been a challenge because, again, when we come into the currency, we talk about cost and value exchange and ensuring that that delivers on those same outcomes that they've delivered in the past. And we get caught up into two areas. The first is our working versus non-working media costs, which at times can be up to 20-30% out of every single dollar that is lost. And the other is around ensuring that we've got market parity around our media rate positions. And that's the challenge, because at the moment, as an industry, we're currently trading 100, 200% more than what we would be from direct IOs. And as an indie and responsible for driving the strongest return investment for our clients, that's a big factor for us. We need to make sure that we're driving solutions that deliver results. So whether that is starting at a whole new baseline and start to measure that differently, or compare it to what we've done in the past.
There's not enough case studies shown today to get you there. I think the parity in pricing is something that's definitely come up, because other channels don't have the kind of difference that we do in out of home. If you're buying a linear TV ad, you're pretty much paying the same CPM as you would on BVOD, whereas we do have that differentiator. Let's dive into it. I know, Whiteside, you've got a few things or different challenges that you'd probably want to talk to in KP. Make it spicy, babe. Come on. Let it out.
Cost or measurement what?
Yeah, just what are the challenges? So, Whiteside, I'll kick with you. What are the challenges IPG have?
These are probably familiar themes. So extending on what Dan mentioned, measurement is one. So until Move 2 comes along, I think the ability or inability to really contrast and compare static versus programmatically enabled, programmatically delivered banners, panels, I keep saying that, sorry, is a challenge. And unfortunately, when that is a challenge, price parity, to your point, becomes the arbitrator of really where that investment goes. So because programmatic CPMs at the moment are a lot higher because of the targeting selectivity that's applied, unfortunately, that's where one of the main inhibitors to accelerated adoption. So although from a programmatic standpoint, we can see that the exposed CPMs tend to be quite or significantly lower when the impression multiplier is actually applied, that needs to come through in the planning level, and that's typically not looked at early enough, I don't think. So that's measurement and price parity are probably two that I see as inhibitors to accelerated growth.
Yeah, and look, I think like we talked about it earlier today, and I totally agree. But I think when it comes to the price parity issue, like I think a lot of that falls on us as well. And I'm not going to throw Lambo under the bus, but we've done a lot of work in terms of, you know, like the differences in the CPMs, right? And what like a strike rate can look like for a programmatic out-of-home CPM, because we know that the audience that we're going after, it is not your generic, you know, demographic audience, right? Like we are being more targeted, and we want to be, and that's the point, right? And all these case studies are showing that when you are more targeted, the results are better. So the CPMs are not the same. It's like comparing apples and cheese. And as an agency, it's our job to go to our clients and make sure that if they are asking us to compare on costs, that's not the barrier, because it's not the same. You know, we wouldn't compare a TV CPM to a cinema CPM when they're vastly different. So I think that's the onus is on us. Obviously, I'm not encouraging anyone to put your prices up. I'd love them to go down, but I think that onus is on us. And then measurement definitely was a barrier. I think I love seeing case studies like this, and the more case studies, the better. It's definitely something that we see as a barrier when a client's first starting to do programmatic out of home. When you're having those early conversations, it's definitely like what you said, like, is it going to work? Will the ROI be there? Maybe, maybe not. But as soon as that is that kind of measurement piece, like whether it's an MMM or BLS or whatever, once that's run and they're bought in, like, you know, kind of like as the Fiji case study was before, it is a no-brainer. And I think that's when it's the point.
Yeah, I think measurement's a sick one. I don't know, Jo, if you've got anything to add to that before
I would just say that we don't generally have a problem selling in outdoor to clients. They love the channel and they can see the benefit of it. It's a great storytelling platform, great creative capability. I think when you then have to go into programmatic and try and talk about the benefits of programmatic, that's when it can get a little bit interesting with them, because, you know, it can cost more, but we need to overcome that, because if they're getting greater ROI, it doesn't really matter. So, again, like I agree, you know, cost inflation is a major factor and we need to make sure that we cap that. But if we can prove effectiveness and ROI, then that's a game changer. Also, from an investment point of view, we've got about 85 to 90% of our investment dollars audited. So we need to make sure that we can prove that effectiveness and warrant that spend.
Yeah.
Maybe we need to just call it advanced out of home from here on out.
Lambo. Look, I think like you said, measurement and price parity are probably the two sticky points. I think from what I've seen, we're really trying to measure the effectiveness of out of home, like other one-to-one channels. They do have those small budgets within, like, that we're using within them. Do you really think we should be using those same metrics as other channels? Like, just a really quick thought, like one sentence, should we, or should we be looking at it differently? Like, what do we need? Because measurements come up today. There's so many different solutions and metrics. I don't know, what's your thought? What's the right thing? Just throwing you in there.
I mean, I'm going to answer it really quickly and say, in some cases, yes, there's some digital metrics you can use. Some cases, there's some out-of-home metrics. But ultimately, we should be looking at the more omni-channel metrics and if it's working together in totality.
And we go there. I like it. Thanks, Kathy.
I think sales uplift. Like, clients want to move product, they want to sell. So we need to be better at proving that effectiveness.
And moving away, though, from those traditional out-of-home metrics that we've seen. So I think sometimes that can be, like, to your point, that's probably the barrier of measurement. We're measuring RNF here. How do we measure that kind of effectiveness over here? But I think, you know, if someone had the holy grail for measurement, if I had that solution, I wouldn't be sitting on this panel. I'd be sipping a cocktail in the Bahamas. Every channel does have that problem. I'm going to move on because I really am conscious of time. Might skip a few of these questions that we do have on here. I know that within the attitudes of programmatic research that came up earlier, we are seeing more teams come together. You've all just sat here and told us that we have, you know, the traditional teams and the programmatic teams that are together. I want to know, though, where strategically is the programmatic out-of-home sitting amongst those other channels? And considering all of the barriers you've spoken about already, like, what are you actually doing to get people to lean into it a little bit more?
Conscious of time, so this is oversimplifying the whole thing, but when I look at channels. I bucket them into 3 categories. So we've got brand establishment, message reinforcement, and then performance marketing. I think out-of-home, this might be controversial, I don't know, but out-of-home firmly sits within the brand and message reinforcement category. So programmatic out-of-home really supercharges that ability with the ability to target a specific audience. So that might be moments of receptivity where we're targeting time of day or location or proximity around venue, for example, or it could be a certain audience cohort. So I have a high-value audience, an in-market audience, using dynamic triggers or dynamic creative to prompt an action. Or I think Siggy mentioned it earlier in terms of looking at incremental audiences to really reinforce a message to increase consideration. So the ability to target a specific audience, increase frequency, really reinforces that message, and that's where we've seen the best results in terms of advanced measurement, which again has been well documented today.
I'm not disagreeing for the sake of disagreeing, but I do think that we have seen, like out-of-home and programmatic out-of-home being able to play at each different area of the funnel, if we're going to believe in the funnel. And we've seen it work well at each side, each layer, right? And so in terms of where it sits within a planner's arsenal, I think it depends on obviously the campaign objectives and what the broader channel mix is going to look like, but also if the right creative is available for each of those different. Like we know that out-of-home will only play the role that it can play dependent on the creative that it's given, right? Because ultimately that's what is also going to shift those brand metrics as well. So I think it's a dual answer, right? So it's like the creative's going to play, but also what role is going to play within the broader mix.
Business results.
Same as, that's fine. Look, education has come up over and over, I think, like even Georgie's panel touched on education earlier. I think you took half of the questions I've had, so I'm skipping over them. Better planning next time. But education is key. I think whilst we've spoken about it, I love what Nick said, educate and be educated. I believe we should all be educating each other. I don't think anyone actually nailed the answer from what I heard, so maybe I was half sleeping. But what are you actually doing in the agencies to educate your traditional buyers and to educate those digital traders? Like, what are you actually doing, like, without just talking about it or the fact that we need it?
Yeah, sure. Look, I think it is our responsibility. Like, we can ask our partners, to educate us, but at the end of the day, the buck stops with us. Our people have to know what we're selling and also how that sits within our broader agency's proposition. We obviously all have quite different propositions, and at Essence Mediacom, we've collaborated with the advanced out-of-home team and actually built modules out. So we have training that everyone has to do, regardless, to be honest, whether they're in trading, client service, strategy and planning, etc., so that everyone is thinking the same and is armed with the same level of education as a pure baseline.
I think just to add to that, what we're doing, or both of us with Joe and I have joined MFA's OFC to ensure that we're just being across everything when it comes to the Outdoors Futures Council, but also specifically around programmatic out-of-home, that we're understanding the nuances that can occur within that space, to try to standardise it, to build its trust within not only within our agencies, but across the entire marketplace. So that's something that we're both, passionately, across and working with the broader team. Lambo's on there as well, but to really drive that forward.
And I really love that as well, the work that the IAB, OMA and OFC are doing to come together and I guess bring these standards of measurement and everything across the ecosystem for programmatic out of home. I don't know if you had anything to add there. I've got 2 minutes to go. I want to just finish off then, cutting off. It's because Nick ran 10 minutes over, so I started a little bit over. Calm down, and the cocktails are coming, Liz. No. Look, guys, I think adding to that, give me just one quick thing. What do media owners need to do better? Just a quick sentence from each of you. What should we be doing better to assist? Or what could we do?
Joint responses, research, site tours.
Site tour. You just want to get drunk?
Yeah, we always have time for site tours. I know that it said that we didn't, we do. No, same, absolutely, same thing. Nothing to build.
No site tours. I haven't been on a site tour for 20 years.
You need
Look,
one.
I think I need one. I think converged sales teams. I had a sales person that I spoke to last year, and I won't name names, they're not in this room, but they said that, you know, their revenue, or they're not hitting their targets because it was all moving programmatic. And I said, well, you need to either adjust your targets because it is going that way, or just converge it and bring it as one target.
Thank
That
you,
would be
Jo,
my
because
advice.
I will say that QMS, this is my time to plug what we're doing. From what I understand, we are the only out-of-home business who have one sales team who does everything. We don't have a programmatic sales team. We will create those specialists, but our sales team are one unit. So there you go, drop the mic. No, I won't. Dan?
Without saying the typical response, I'd say to all the suppliers out there that want to help to drive indies, build case studies, come to our business, offer us something, work with us, incentivize something. We'll make it work. We'll deliver case studies. We'll get the clients on board. We'll make this a success. So yeah.
Okay, great. And I know that we're out of time, so I'll email Nick later. I do just want to say thank you to the panel for coming today. Thank you to everybody for staying late. We look forward to next year.